This is Success Beyond the Score, giving insights and tips to help you learn how to build your music career from the best in the field by Millicent Stephenson. Millicent is a multi-award winning saxophonist and endorser of Harry Hartman's Fiber Reeds. She is currently serving on the Executive Committee of the Musicians Union. With over 40 years' experience in the creative industry, Millicent has honed her performance and business skills. She provides personal development training and coaching via her online platform, successbeyondthescore.com.
Hi, I'm Millicent Stephenson, and today I'm interviewing Louise Dengate. Louise is an exceptional vocalist and coach, but after taking her music degree when she was a little younger than she is now, she became a receptionist and realised it was not for her and set out to grow her music into a full-time career. It now has a gospel choir, teaching, coaching and a music agency. But how did she do it? With cancelled gigs because of the coronavirus and lockdown, she navigated by developing her passion about psychology and the stage, and today she gives us an insight into this fascinating area. Louise is married to Alex, who is also a full-time musician and a phenomenal pianist. They have 2 young children, and today on Success Beyond the Score, we hear from Louise on how they balance attending gigs and leading projects.
So, hey, let's just kick off with these things then. So I think it's really important to know something about you, but I'm interested in finding out, who are you now? How would you describe yourself now and your career now?
Well, that's a tricky question to answer in 2020 because obviously a lot of things have changed.
Yeah.
So at the beginning of the year, I was quite hopeful, like, oh, I've got the gospel choir and I've got my teaching and I was singing at different restaurants. I got my music agency, And then obviously all of that stopped. Everything. So like lost all the restaurants, all the events, all the weddings, everything. So I have kind of used this year really as a time to retrain and to sort of research into other areas. Yeah. So I almost feel like I'm on a bit of a musical sabbatical.
Yeah.
I'm almost having a bit of time off from performing. I mean, I've been writing a little bit and just written a song last week, actually, a Christmas song. So done all that kind of thing, but mostly having a rest from it really and taking time to sort of train and research in other things.
So you have many things that you do, many hats, I guess. But how do you describe yourself? Do you see yourself as a musician, a singer, an agency director, choir director?
Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? I mean, somebody was saying this the other day. She's another singer. She was like, I don't have a label. And I think she'd done a business card and it had loads and loads of descriptions of all the different things she does. And I was like, it is quite hard. You can't just say, I'm an optician or I'm a nurse. You know, I tend to say I'm a musician. And then when people ask what that means, then I'm like, well, 10 fingers for 10 pies, many fingers in many pies, you know. So, and I think for some people, not everybody, but for some people, if you want to be full time, it's about diversity and changing with the times and, you know, seeing what inroads you can get. So probably my favorite thing is gospel choir. That's definitely my favorite.
Yeah.
I think I love bringing all singers together. I like the big events that we do because there's so much energy and it's so much fun. After that, the jazz and the pop stuff that I do, that's quite chilled in restaurants. I like the teaching and I've just got a bit into video editing actually. I'm quite new at it, quite new, but I had a guy teaching me a couple of lessons. So I'm like, I nearly get it. I nearly get it now. And just been doing a bit of research actually into sort of musicians and their psychology and how that all works together and how they experience the stage, you know, and stage life, because it's different for every person. So yeah,
say a little bit more about
things.
that, because say a little bit more about the psychology, because that's quite an interesting take, because most musicians are performing, and performing, writing and performing. But now you're thinking about the psychology. What's kind of got you into that, and what's the fascination? It sounds
I love it.
different.
I love it. Okay, so I've started writing a book, and it's called Skill and Psychology, because I would have students that had all the skill in the world. They were brilliant, but they didn't always have the psychology to get them to the next step. So they might, have crippling self-doubt, or hyper perfectionism, or an ability to catastrophize all the time, whatever it was. Or sometimes, in my head, I'm like, you are a grade A singer, musician. But they would think that they were a C. And I'm like, so you can have all this skill, but if you don't have the psychology to match it, you are at a disadvantage. But you've spent all this years and years of developing your skill, but you need to develop the psychology as well. So that's the whole thing about skill and psychology going hand in hand. You need both. And sometimes, even because I sometimes see pro singers like the West Enders, when they've finished a show, sometimes they'll have a couple of months off because they're auditioning for another show, and they'll come see me for a little bit just to work on their vocals from a technique point of view, and then go off again. And even some of those professionals, they didn't always enjoy what they were doing, even if they were successful. And at that point, I think, how successful is that then if you're not enjoying it? So I got really, really curious about that angle of psychology. And then just this year, so it's quite a new thing really, I've really been getting into something called Enneagram. So Enneagram looks at, it says there's 9 different types of personality. So it's just numbers, then 1 to 9. Yeah. So numbers 2, 3, and 4 are what they call heart types. 5, 6, and 7 are head types, and 8, 9, and 1 are the body types. And each number experiences life ever so differently, and therefore experiences the stage ever so differently. So I haven't actually found anyone that's written a book on Enneagram and the performer. So I'm kind of like figuring it out as I go along. How a 2 would experience the stage is infinitely different to how, say, like a type 6 would experience the stage. So the book is all about, how to, if you're a type 3, how to help you, what your unique psychological challenges will be, but what your advantages will be, and how to best work with your own sort of mind and emotions. So not just that you are successful in terms of getting work, but successful in enjoying it. Because if you don't enjoy it, then you've missed the point,
Yeah, it's just like a day job somewhere. You're just bored every Monday. Why am I here?
Yeah.
I'm kind of interested a little bit more on that. So give me an example of a heart type and a mind type and a body type, in experiencing the stage, how each person would do that.
Okay, so I actually did a really big survey on this. So I had about 50 odd people answer like a whole ton of questions.
Wow.
And it was absolutely fascinating. So just before a head, for instance, and there's lots of different factors. So I'm only taking a slither of this, right? So
we just want a little taste. Yeah, we're going to wait for the book. We're waiting for the book, but we just want a little.
This book's going to take a long time coming. Honestly, the more I research it, the more I'm like, wow, this is amazing. So much I don't know. So the head types generally, when they're just about to go on stage, they've got a little bit of worry. So they're like, right, I want to remember the first line, or okay, what key is this in, or I've got to get it right, and a little bit sort of. Everybody has nerves, but the head types, they want to get it right, and so they're in the head, they're thinking.
Right.
The heart types,
a
lot of them said, I don't think anything, and I was like, really? No, they don't think anything. They just feel. They just feel the emotion. So maybe they might feel excitement, or some of them might feel worried, but there's no inner conversation going on in their head.
Okay.
Wow. And the body types, it's a very somatic, like, I'm aware that my hands are jingling a little bit, or I'm aware that maybe I'm a little bit sweaty or something. So the body types are very aware of their somatic sensations. The heart types are aware of how they feel, emotions, and the head types are thinking about it. So that's kind of very basically the differences.
I like that, and I'm sure everyone will be thinking whether they're head, heart, or body. I'm thinking what do I do when I go on stage? Very nice. I love this.
If you like, after this, I can send you a link for a free test that tells you what number you are.
Oh, let's do that, and I'll put it in the show notes as well, so everyone else can have a go with that as well. So let's do that. I like the sound of that. So listen, were you always a full-time musician then, or were you doing something else before?
Yeah, well, after university, I actually worked in a doctor's surgery as a receptionist.
Yeah.
And I absolutely hated it. I just hated it. But you know what? That was the best thing for me, because I hated it so much. They were lovely people, by the way. They were really nice. But it just wasn't for me. I was so bored. And I don't know, I have that urge to be creative. So I only did it for about 3 months. And I was thinking, I've got to make this work. I've got to make, because I can't do this as a job or any job that's not creative. I will die. My heart will die. So I was doing teaching a little bit, and then I was starting to gig a little bit. So I left that job and just did teaching and performing, and then got married. And then my husband Alex was saying, okay, we need a little bit more income now that we're married. We've got our own house, got a mortgage. So I did teach in schools for a little bit.
Yeah.
And then I got offered a job at the church as the music minister. So I dropped the schools, did the church job, and then I had children. So I dropped the church job because you just can't do both, really.
Yeah.
And then after church, when I was getting back into work again, I kind of went back to teaching and performing, but I just grew both of them more. And I just became more focused, because when you've got children, you can't have, I don't know, so many options open to you. You have to choose. So I keep streamlining. You know, I can't do that anymore. Like, I'm just gonna focus. So I kind of came back around in a full loop of teaching and performing again.
So what's your degree in music?
Yes.
So why did you go into reception work straight after doing a degree in music, or was it? Yeah, well, that's yeah.
It's all right, because I didn't want to do classroom teaching.
Right. So the degree in music meant you have to become a school teacher, a music teacher. And
no, not necessarily. Like, after the degree, you know, you could do anything you like. It's just that I didn't really know. I hadn't really built up my own business enough to do just teaching. I mean, to be fair, in university, I did have quite a few students, but I couldn't give teaching my full time because I was at university. So afterwards, I just had to build teaching up a bit more. The reception job was literally just because I just needed a bit of extra income, but it certainly gave me the oomph to build my teaching work, really.
Yeah. So having a degree then, do you think that the degree at that time meant that anyone who finished the degree, it was teaching but not performing? Was it, or did other students go on to perform or go on to write or go on to produce? Or
it's really interesting, actually, like what people did afterwards, because in terms of statistically, I think out of, say, Birmingham Conservatoire, something like sort of 50% go into teaching, 25% go into performing, and 25% do something else entirely. In my sort of uni year, I would say it's kind of similar. I say 50% have gone on to teaching, 25% have gone maybe something that's sort of slightly related, but not completely. So a couple of us are performance based. Or something similar, like selling products to do with music. You know, I know a guy that's got an instrument shop, somebody else that worked at Sonos, all that kind of thing. And then, another 25% that did something entirely different. But I just knew I didn't want to do classroom teaching. I knew that wasn't for me.
And do you think there's a gender thing in there, being a woman Did that sort of dictate that you thought about teaching more, or not? I mean, did the guys go off and do something else, and then the women? I'm just curious.
I don't think there's much of a gender difference. I wouldn't say massively. There wasn't an assumption of teaching necessarily. It's just, I think that's an easier option.
Yeah.
I think, and for me, I've been teaching singing for 20 years.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's crazy.
Wow.
The first time I got into it, my singing teacher was having a baby. So she said to me when I was 18, a bit young really, do you want to do stage coach? And I was like, I've never taught kids before. And she said, this is how you do it. So she taught me, and she did teach me for a little while, but not that long. And then I was teaching in Stagecoach. I did that to start with, and even though I really liked it and the kids were just adorable and everything, I always found it frustrating that I couldn't work one-to-one, especially with the ones that I knew, like, oh, you've got something. I knew I wanted to do one-to-one, so then I did one-to-one, and that's kind of how I knew I didn't want to do classroom, because it's too many all at once. I like that one-to-one relationship.
I know what you mean.
I mean, yeah. The gospel choir is a funny one, actually, because a lot of those people in the past or currently, I am seeing one-to-one.
Yeah.
So I know each of them and their voices. So that's different, because I can say, right, Laura, this song's good for your voice because I know your range, I know your tone, I know your style. This is for you. Josie, this is for you. So that kind of is different, I think. But generally, I'm really into the one-on-one.
So you're a husband and wife team. So what I really want to know is, how do two creatives get on in the house with their music? I mean, is there competition, mutual support? I mean, who decides who's playing the piano when? Do you have to book it in?
When we were first together, it's because I auditioned to be in his jazz band. That's how we met. So that was funny, really. And then sometimes we'd be doing the whole band, but sometimes people would just want two people. So then we kept being at these really romantic places, him on the piano and me singing. And it was like inevitable, really. But I remember him saying, oh, I'd never marry a musician. I was like,
all right, so you already had scopes,
I knew really early on. And anyway, he was playing. I knew it. So funny. We did have a good time.
It's a bit like the lady loves milk tray, but the man loves milk tray in this one. You give him the chocolates and say, right, you're mine, mate. That's it.
Well, I remember us having this phone call, and we both recently broken up with our partners, and I was like, the next person I want to be with is somebody a bit like you. I mean, not you, but someone just like you. Totally dropped myself in it. It was so hilarious. And he was like, oh, I'm the same. The next person I want to be with is someone like you. I mean, not you, but someone like you. I'm like, what are we doing here? What are we doing? So then we started dating and all that. So
do you fight over the piano though? Well, I can see the piano behind. Do you have a scrap as to who's playing the piano now and who's practicing?
Not really, because we got the kids here. So we do. This is a little chalet here. So this is at the bottom of the garden. The house is up there. So this is a nice little hideaway, really. So sometimes we do come down here and jam together. But I mean, I play piano. I did like grade 8 piano, but he's definitely better on piano than I am. So I much prefer to let him jam on piano and then I'll sing. That works better for us. If I have to play the piano, I'll do it. But I much prefer the freedom of singing. It feels much more open and free to me. Whereas he's the other way around. He feels more free on the piano. But we used to have this thing when we were younger. I say younger, when we first married, that he was bossy. No, which way around was it? I was bossy, but he was the boss, or something like that. So we'd have who wears the trousers? We've ripped the trousers in half. We got one leg each. So we're both, because we're both quite leader types. We can both be quite strong. So we had, in the end, we just had an agreement, like, okay, this project Louise, you're leading it and I'll do whatever you say. And then this project, Alex, you're leading it and I'll do whatever you say. So we have often gone into each other's projects. So as long as we know who's the lead, it's all right. If we try and do something equal footing, that's not so good. It has to be that one of us is ultimately in charge.
So I suppose one's a body type, one's a mind type, one's a heart type or something. I don't know which one you fit into. But I think that's quite good though, for in terms of a relationship, you know, figuring out what works. I know certainly when I got married, my husband isn't a musician, but when we were decorating our house, I liked doing the skirting boards, whereas he just wouldn't do it. He'd hang the wallpaper. So he does like the sort of bigger picture things and I'll do the small detail. And that works really, really well in most cases. Only when sometimes there's a clash and I'm doing the small detail with the situation that he's involved in, and he's like, I don't want the detail. He's like, I just want the big picture. And we have a scrap about that. But it's kind of good that you worked out your boundaries.
You got a good balance there, though. If he's big picture and your details, that's a good balance.
It works.
So you have an agency, you run the choir, you're into psychology, you have children, you're a wife. I mean, how do you balance this, especially the family side of things? I mean, is it a 50-50? Do you take the lead in most things? I mean, how do you juggle all of that and look as fantastic as you do?
That's very kind. I think for me personally, I just really like being self-employed because then I've got all the flexibility in the world. I mean, I just take my hat off to mums that are locked into like a 9-to-5 thing, because I would just find that so hard. I mean, I know you got breakfast club and after school club for kids and stuff like that, but the flexibility with being self-employed, I mean, you've always got that problem that you haven't got that safety net like an employed person has, but I wouldn't change it, because I can just dictate my hours. I can dictate what gigs I take, what gigs I don't want to take. I mean, that's where the agency came from, really, because there was too many gigs and I couldn't take them all. So I was like, well, I'll give them to my friends then who are really good. So that's how I started at the agency, really. And the agency has got a unique thing in that I know like 95% of the people in it. There's like, I think there's one guy that I don't know him that well, like, but everyone else, I know them. So when I'm speaking to the manager of a place or, you know, the client, I can vouch for that person because I know them and I'm like, no, they're really good and they're really nice as well.
Yeah.
You can get some amazing musicians that are really hard work, you know, personality wise. So so that's what I try and find ways around little issues. So self-employed for the flexi time, agency work to give away work that I can't necessarily do, and using different musicians actually. So, you know, I was saying Alex, he's one of the pianists for Crystal Gospel Choir because it can't always be him, because if we can't get a babysitter, well, what we're going to do then? So he's one of the pianists and I use about 4. So I try and always keep an amount of flexibility in who I use, and that's why there's a pool of singers for Crystal as well. So often we go out as about 15 people or 12, but the pool of singers is about 30 because they've all got kids and jobs and stuff like that. So I'll just choose different people at different times to try and keep it as flexible as possible, really.
Yeah. Now, obviously, you know, we are going through lockdowns. I mean, we've had 2 and the COVID thing. So how are you finding it in terms of your income? You're a full-time musician, you're self-employed. Within the industry, obviously, theatres are closed, gigs are cancelled. Certainly all of mine cancelled to next year. So how are you finding it and what are you doing to sort of stay afloat during this time?
Yeah, that has been hard. I mean, obviously, there's the government grants for self-employed people. And I'm just really grateful that I was honest on my tax returns for the last couple of years.
So am I.
There are some people that have not been honest and like they've paid a price this year, you know. But I'm not making a judgment call on them. That's between them and whoever. But so that's been helpful with the government grants. With teaching, it did stop, but then I did go down the online route of teaching, and I would say about half of them still did it like that. And then in the summer when restrictions lifted, there was a hesitancy of them coming back because some of them were a bit nervous. But then slowly most people came back. So the teaching just kept going, really. There was the dip.
Yeah.
It kept going. The gigs pretty much were completely stopped. Although we just did one recently, actually, Crystal Gospel Choir did for Cancer Research UK. They wanted an online concert.
Oh.
Yeah, for all their legacy donors. They're the ones that I've given for years.
Yeah.
So they just said, oh, can we do these Christmas songs? And so arranged them, and then everyone recorded from their home. And then I pulled all those shots in. So we did, those choir grids people have been
Yes,
doing.
yeah.
I did one of those. And so they had us in their concert. So that was it was like a gig. It was like an online gig. I was like, we got one. I mean, it's hard though, because even today somebody said, oh, I think that we'll be going into tier 2. And so this particular restaurant wanted a jazz duo on Christmas Eve. So I was like, oh, great. But they just cancelled today because they didn't get the tier 2. So that's still happening.
Yeah.
But really, all the weddings from this year have all been pushed into next summer. So I'm kind of trying to make most of the time now before that all goes crazy again. So the teaching money, the government grants, and then Alex's because he works for a college in the performing arts, so his wage didn't change. So for us that was nice, steady aspect.
If you were to think back over the last 20 years, what would be one of the things you would say, this was a highlight for me?
I'm probably a bit strange in this answer, because I hear other people answer this sometimes, and they'll say the biggest venue they've been in and who was there, some famous person. Even though those things have happened, and that's really nice. For me,
wow, I found that so illuminating. And I can't wait for Louise's part 2, where she talks about her highs and her lows, the challenges of being a female director, and of course, tips to help you build your music into a full-time career. And while you're waiting, why not check out some of the previous episodes of my podcast, Success Beyond the Score? And I have a free booklet called Revealed, 25 Secrets of the Successful Gigging Musician, Singer, Rapper and Spoken Word Artist. And you can get that on www.successbeyondthescore.com. Okay, speak to you soon. Bye for now.